Okay, all right. So, hey, love, and we're gonna do salt dough ornaments today. Pretty simple and fun. So I gotta say, this is gotta be one of on the top of my list for one of my favorite Christmas memories is making the salt dough ornaments and decorating them. And I relish it every year when I hang up those salt dough ornaments that we have all made over the years. So here we go. What you need is you need flour. Do the cheap stuff. Do not get fancy with the flour. Cheap flour, plain white salt. Get the cheapest that you can get, and then 1.5 cups of warm water. And and you'll also want to have some parchment paper because you're going to roll out the dough between the parchment paper. And you'll want to have what else? Well, a rolling pin because we're going to be rolling out the dough, and preferably in an apron. But mine is filthy right now, and I have not washed it yet. So I need to get that. So we're going to start out with the flour. We want 4 cups of flour. Oh, before we get started, so the trick to keeping these bubble free and not curling and whatnot is you're going to want to bake them in the oven low and slow. A lot of recipes will say to bake them at 300 or 350, and I did that one year and they did bubble. So each year after I bake them at about 200 degrees or 250. The lower you are to sea level, probably 200 would be good, and it'll be about an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and you'll just watch them. But yeah, so you'll get your oven preheated to 200 or 250. So that's half. 1. Half. 2. A lot of flour. And a half. 3. Now you can cut this recipe in half. So you would just do 2 cups of flour, half a cup of salt, and cut your water in half to so half 3/4 of a cup. So all right, let me set this up here. All right, and then 1 cup of salt. Okay. I always have such fond memories of doing these salt dough ornaments. And this is a ton of salt, and this makes it so that they don't go bad. Okay, and that's 1 cup of salt. And then, well, I guess you're supposed to technically whisk, but I'll go ahead and just mix with my hands. You want to make sure the salt is good and spread throughout. You do not want clumps of salt. You want it spread very evenly before you put the water in there. Now I have read that you can air dry these. Takes a couple days and takes up space, but I don't know that air drying versus baking them is any different, other than time. I've never actually air dried them. I've only ever baked them. Okay, so let me get a spoon. All right. So you're going to drizzle, make sure your water's warm. I think mine needs a little heat up. Let me put a little bit of warm water in here. All right, here we go. So you're going to pour some of the water in, and you're going to stir this until you can't stir it anymore because it's going to get into a stiff dough. And once you get to that point, then we'll swap over to our hands and do that. So just pour your water in and stir, 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 stir. Just keep stirring. Be just like Dory. Keep stirring. And as you can see, it's coming together. It's very shaggy, and it's getting more and more difficult to actually stir with the spoon. So we're getting close. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and swap on over to hand kneading it. And I might need to add a little bit of water because we're so much drier up here that sometimes you need a little extra water than what recipes actually call for. So that's what I'm going to do. The other thing you'll want is something to cut out your shapes with. Now, if you don't have Christmas cookie cutters, you can just do circles and you can even hand cut them out. You know, cut out some triangles, and those can be Christmas trees. If you're really good and you have a nice, very sharp blade, you could cut out stars or the shape of stockings. Those are all pretty simple shapes to do. All right, now we're really getting into it. All right. So once your dough is at this point where you can actually pick it up and hold it, you want to take it off, and now we're going to hand knead. And we're going to knead it for about, I don't know, we want it super soft, so it could be about 5 minutes. It just really depends. But you want it very soft and pliable, and you just get your upper arm workout, I guess, while you're doing this. It's not a super smooth dough, so you're not looking for that, and we're not doing looking for the same thing that like when we're making bread or any such thing like that. It's going to be feel and react very differently. And we'll just keep on kneading. I remember so well the first Christmas with you girls that I had. And that was a pretty awesome one because we had so much snow. So much snow. It was pretty neat. That was a very cozy Christmas. Stands out in my memory. And then I also remember the last Christmas that I actually got to be with all three of you girls a few years ago, long before little Bubba was born. And that was really enjoyable, really enjoyable. And that's one thing with these salt dough ornaments, they sure do they sure do mark the time quite well, mark the seasons in your lives and all of that. And I just come to really enjoy these. So, and you can do this salt dough ornament. This salt dough is sturdy enough to do handprints in them. You can do handprints or footprints. You can even do paw prints. And one thing that I read that is the best way to get the handprints out of these is to just roll out the dough and have the handprint, put the handprint on there, and then cut around the handprint for that. That way you don't have to worry about getting the handprint perfectly centered on the ornament or in the dough shape. Oh, my little thing's getting away from me. Okay. I think we're about there. Yeah, that's getting good and soft. So it's going to start feeling like Play-Doh, really. Fresh Play-Doh, I should say. So this, as a matter of fact, you can make all kinds of things with this salt dough, and there's nothing toxic about it. So if somebody decides they want to take a little nibble out of it, then they can. It's going to be gross, but but yeah, all kinds of things. You can make figurines. I can't do that. I'm not talented in making stuff like that. That's a totally different talent. Okay. So it's good and stiff, but it is very soft and pliable, and that's what we're looking for. So, and as you can see, like if I push into it, it's making a nice little divot. You just don't want it to be at the point where it's going to tear. So all the kneading, you need the gluten in the flour, so don't use a gluten-free flour for this. I don't think that will work. You really need the gluten, and that will hold it together. Okay, I think we're good there. All right, let me make some room. All right, get some coffee. It's not literally coffee, it's actually dandy. So I haven't made any coffee yet this morning, and I guess I'm feeling a little too lazy to do it. Okay, so you'll need 2 pieces of parchment paper. One of them you're going to just pick up and set right on your cookie sheet. So it's helpful if you make it the same size as your, close to the same size as your cookie sheet, so that you can roll it out. I almost was going to roll out this whole thing on that little bit. You don't do that. Take a chunk off. Right, good chunk. So the thicker the better, but you don't want to go too crazy thick. I'd say no more than an 1/8 of an inch thick. Actually, I take that back. I'm going backward. I'm the opposite. I don't know what's with me today. You want to go thin, but you don't want to go paper thin. You want to err on the side of a little bit thicker, but they dry and they don't crack as much when you can get them to about, I don't know, an 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch thick. Then they do quite well. Your other portion of dough, you will want to cover that, because it will begin to dry out. I mean, that's the whole purpose in it. So you want to cover that. Maybe with some saran wrap would be good. So that it doesn't dry out. I've never had it actually dry out on me, but then again, I don't know. There's always a first. So, all right, set that there. Back under there. All right, now we've got our hunk of dough. Let's go ahead and flip that over so it doesn't keep rolling on me. You can do the crinkle trick on the parchment, where you crinkle it up real tight and then lay it back out, and then it lays flat. All right. Then you're just going to start rolling. It does take a little bit of effort, because it is a very thick dough, and it is like clay. Okay, let's see where we're at. That needs to go thinner. I hadn't thought about it. I bet I could use my pasta dough machine to roll this out and do strips. Okay. Oh, oh. You will want to make sure you don't have any big lumps in it when you're doing it, because sometimes pressing down really hard, it'll get you some really big lumps. All right, let's see where we're at. Okay. Well, I think that's probably pretty good. That's probably pretty good, yeah. I don't know if you can see or tell, but that's about the thickness. That's pretty decent thickness. Now, I didn't even think about this, but you know, making salto ornaments, what a inexpensive way to send some really awesome gifts. Also, all right, so now we got our dough. Yeah, and it's pretty good there. And it's okay if it's not perfectly even all throughout the thing. All right, so then you get your cookie cutters. Let's see. We'll do some candy canes. Let's do some candy canes. And should we do some stockings? We'll do some candy canes and some stockings. And we'll do some stars. Alrighty. And this probably is not going to pop out like cookies will. You're just going to end up with, and that's kind of why we do it on the parchment paper, so that we just peel the parchment or the excess dough up from around it, and then they can stay on the parchment. All right, let's see. Let's get some candy canes. And it is kind of sticky, so that looks like a good spot for. You just want to make sure you do cut all the way through the dough with your cookie cutter or your glass. If you're going to hand cut these, just be prepared that you may have to transfer it to a different piece of parchment, because you're likely just to be cut through the parchment, which is okay. It's a little difficult, so you just want to be real gentle with it. Let's see. All right. Well, let's just go like this. All right. Now let's see if I went according to my own advice. Not completely. I did not cut all the way through that one. Let me see. There we go. All right. Oh, that one I might have to abandon. I think this is the hardest part about the salt dough, is after you've cut it, trying to get them to where you're not breaking them apart. Okay. Doing all right here. Don't worry about if it's got a little bit of rough edges. You can either opt to go the more rustic route and leave the rough edges, or a little bit of sandpaper after they're all dried and cooled and baked before you paint, and it'll take it right on off. You're just going to keep working your way around, getting all the shapes freed up. All right. I know most videos would cut it out by now or fast forward, time lapse past all of this, but I just want you to see what it looks like. Sometimes it doesn't come off super pretty, or it takes a little bit of time. And this way, if you're having this, it's okay. It's okay. For some reason, I'm seeing a lot of sticking on my parchment paper this time, but and I might have to, yeah, this one's gonna have to get, I got one I didn't cut all the way through, and one star, so it's gonna go back into the dough pile. All right. There we go. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to transfer these off of this parchment and put them on a different parchment. All right. So, get a nice sharp spatula. If you got to do that, you want to get a nice sharp spatula so that you can go right up underneath them and slowly remove them from the parchment. There we go. There you go. Okay. So let's get a cookie sheet. All right. Move this. Set the dandy Teos inside. Okay, so we will. It'll be kind of loud on the video, but I'll do the crinkle thing. There we go. Okay. Now it lays much flatter and softer. All right. Transfer that. Let's get these up. There we go. Yay. Ah, lovely. And you can reuse parchment paper. If it doesn't get all kind of oily, you can definitely reuse parchment paper. So you can do one batch at a time. And once you remove the batch off of the parchment paper, then you can put the new batch on it and just keep on going. We'll get these on up. Okay. There we go. We got a little bit. I think I should have pressed down harder with my cookie cutters. That's all right. There we go. Now, I didn't say it while we were making it, but if you want these a certain color without having to paint them, you can put food dye into the dough. I would probably put it in at the point that you're kneading. You can separate it out and put a little bit of food dye in and then knead it all together, and that should get it spread out quite evenly. See, this one's got a little bit of rough edging going on here, and I can pick some of that off. I'm not going to go too crazy though, because it'll start messing with the actual shape. So that stuff I'll just rub off with, I don't know, I bet you a nail file will probably file it down just fine. I bet you an emery board will take care of that. Okay. All right. So there we go. And for the sake of this video, I will do the rest of the ornaments off camera. But for these, let me show you what we got next. Oh. Okay. So, all right, let me move this. Put this back in. And one thing I don't know is how far in advance you can make this salt dough and let it sit. Because typically I just do them all right then and there. But I imagine you could have a good few hours easily. All right. So now, what we want to do is you've got your ornaments, and these will not spread. There'll be no spreading. They shouldn't spread, I should say. And while they're soft, do not forget to put a hole for where you can put the ribbon or something to hang them. This is the time to do it. And some people use a toothpick. I don't have a toothpick, so I'm going to use a chopstick. You can use just anything that will create that size hole that you want, but you do want it to be all the way through and good and solid. Don't go too close to the edge, because that's when that stuff starts breaking off. You might be tempted to go a little close to the edge, but stay away from the edge. That way you can, you're not creating a weak point in the ornament there. So you're just gonna poke it on through. So from experience, this hole, it's a pretty decent hole. It depends on what you're gonna string through. If you're wanting to do like a ribbon, a thicker ribbon, then that's probably a little too small and you'll need to make it larger. But I think what I am going to do is I'm going to make it just a little bit larger, but I think I'm going to we'll put yarn, and we'll do yarn as our hangers. So just work your way through doing each one. And they don't have to be in the center. They could be off-centered, so that it gives it a little bit of an angle when it hangs. There's nothing wrong with that. So let's see, we'll do that for this one. Make it a little off-centered. Put it off. That way, when it hangs, it'll hang on an angle. And stars are a little bit harder because you have the legs of the stars, and you don't want to make it too skinny of an area around your hole. Okay, and the candy canes. Now, while I'm finishing these, talk about what happens if, they do break after they're all decorated and whatnot, and especially if you don't want to let go of it. Typically what I've had happen is that it's a thin break. Like this candy cane, the upper portion is much thinner than this part. So I can see at some point in time, it's probably going to break around here. Over the years, just getting picked up and hung and placed back in its container for the, while it awaits the next Christmas season. And I have found that at the dollar store, well, the $1.25 store, they have, over by the automotive section, gel super glue. And it's literally the super glue brand. And it's gel, so it doesn't smoosh or drip all over the place. It works really good, really good. I had to mend an ornament already this year, and it was perfect. It was a really good fix. So, all right, now that you've got your holes, that's the bare minimum, and perfectly good leaving it just like that, which that's what I did in the past. Or you can create little divots. You can use, I don't have any straws, but you can use a straw to create some, little bubble looking things in there. You can, let's see. Let me see. You can create divots with, for the candy canes that kind of help guide where the paint will go. Give it some texture. Yeah, that kind of worked out pretty good. Just don't smoosh your hole back down. There. All right. Maybe I'll do a little divot at the top of the stockings just to kind of give it, and that gives it a little bit more of a dimensional kind of look to it. But honestly, when you're doing it with young ones, it don't really matter. All right, I think that's all I'm going to do for this one. So here we go. Here's what they look like. Now, when you're baking them, you're going to know they're done when they're hard or browned. Now, if they do brown a little, I don't know if maybe if you remember the first year, we did have some that were burned, but it's no big deal because you just spray paint over it, or you can just create a paint, or you can just leave it and they look like burned cookies. So you could do that. But that's how you'll know that they're done, is that they're actually just hard or browning, and then they're good to go. And when they're done, you take them out, let them cool some, because they are going to be pretty warm to the touch. Maybe not excessively warm because we're doing a much lower temperature in the oven, but just let them cool a little bit, and then you can put them on a cooling rack. But you want to make sure they're totally cool before you start moving them around a whole lot. That way, I don't know why. You just want them really cool. Oh, I think it's before you start painting them. But if you're doing this a couple of days prior or a week prior to when we're going to be doing our little ornament thing, then you don't have to worry about that because we're not doing them the same day. So, all right, that's it. These are going to go in the oven. These will probably, I'm assuming probably about maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. I'll just keep checking on them and all of that. And enjoy. Have fun. I'm going to put these in the oven and then I'll shut off the camera.